and welcome to the latest episode of the Awesome Friday podcast. Coming to you this week with great efficiency from the Teutonic regions. Or something, I don't know where that came from. My name is Matthew, with me as always is Simon. How are you, Simon?
Well, guten Tag, wie geht's? Finally, we can reveal our master plan as progenitors of the new Reich of podcasting. I'm fine.
Too far.
Oh, as always. I'm okay. I'm very sleepy because a bunch of people were in my house last night in person, including you. And so my partying days are long behind me. So it was good. I don't know if you had a good time. I had a good time. And it was the first time we finally got people over to our house. And I think as a proof of concept, it worked really, really well. We can host a lot of people. The kids are not affected. There's places for them to go and hide. It was great.
Yeah, it was also just weird to see everyone in person after 2.5 years of not doing that.
So that is the first time we've been together, I think, as a big group since mid-2020. Is that correct? When we all went to Granville Island?
Yes.
It's
I
hard
think
to
so. Yeah.
It's hard to know. I feel like there's just chunks of time missing.
Yeah, I mean, time has no meaning, so.
It really doesn't. But how are you feeling? How are you doing? How's life in your household? How are your cats, more importantly?
Good, and also good. Yeah, we're all good. We're all enjoying a long weekend and being lazy and clumsy, apparently. So,
yay!
and I would love to talk about all the amazing, interesting films we watched this week, but I've really just watched the two things that we are going to talk about, and also a lot of Letterkenny again. So,
so prepare yourself for random Letterkenny jokes that you have no idea what they are if you've never seen that show. Enjoy that, and Shawsey as well. We can throw into the mix.
Yeah, it's true. Have you watched anything other than the things we're going to talk about this week at all?
So I watched the first half of the first episode of Star Trek: Brave New Worlds.
Ooh, Strange New Worlds.
Strange New Worlds. What did I say?
Brave
New Worlds. Well, it's the same thing, isn't it? Really.
One of those is slightly more dystopian than the other.
I've just finished Somebody Feed Phil. On Netflix, which we can finally talk about now, even though neither of us is going to write anything about it. But I don't know if you've seen Somebody Feed Phil, but it is the best thing on television, and you should watch it.
Really? I disagree entirely. I could not get through the first season.
Oh, really? You don't like it?
No, didn't like it.
Oh.
I didn't like the first season at all.
Oh, it's a family favorite in this house.
If I wanted to go and see a white man be, marvel at foreign food, I would just watch food shows from the 80s. I don't need that anymore.
Oh, wow. Gosh.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I don't think it's ill-intended. I just think it's not. I just don't find it very. Yeah, I don't find it to be worth my time. Anyway.
Fair enough. But I don't think we've watched anything else apart from Letterkenny. How about apart from, you've already said movies and Letterkenny, but anything weird? Oh, I watched a movie called Sea Fever, 2019 Irish horror movie, which is somewhere in the middle of Alien and The Thing.
Sea Fever. What happens in Sea Fever?
There's an Irish sea trawler. That goes out into the Irish Sea, and they go into a restricted area because that's where the fish be, and they want to catch the fish and sell them to make money. And apparently these days it's quite hard to do that. So interestingly, there's a scientist who goes on board, a very introverted scientist played by Hermione Caulfield, who maybe you remember from Triple X: The Return of Xander Cage as the secretive agency leader, but she's in this
and Mission Impossible
Rogue Nation. Yeah, and it was killing me during this movie that I'd seen her somewhere before. And the reason I didn't recognize her is that all the other movies we see her play super like confident, sexy, kick-ass, and in this she is a quiet redhead, like super quiet, introverted, like completely different to what she's usually playing. Anyway, she studies behavior. And so she goes on to her job there is to like look at their catch and study the behavior of the fish, or blah blah blah. Anyway, they go into the restricted zone and they come across this basically big sea creature that thinks it's a whale, and Oh, I'm sorry, am I boring?
No, wait.
Yeah.
Do they think it's a whale, or does it think it's a whale?
The giant creature thinks the fishing boat is a whale and tries to eat it
Oh,
with tentacles, and the little parasites that it emits to is like absorb the whale, gets into their bodies, and anyway, it's something like that. But it's quite nice that it's a monster movie, but the monster is kind of just being itself. It's not directly trying to kill the humans. They're just trying to deal with being caught up in the middle of this situation. And it's got Connie Nelson in it, who's always good, and Dougray Scott. So it's pretty good.
huh. And where did you watch this? Because I feel like I
I
might want to.
I watched it on Channel 4, so it's a Film 4 thing if you have a VPN, but apparently it's also on Crave.
Oh, good.
So
You know, I
you can
do
watch
actually have a favorite Irish horror movie, and that movie is called Grabbers. I don't know if you've ever heard of this movie.
that.
Grabbers is a movie about a small Irish town in which an alien invasion happens, and the aliens are these animals. They have a proboscis they shoot that and they eat people. They're little balls, and they're called grabbers because they grab people. But it turns out that if you have a high blood alcohol content, then they can't eat you. So it's way to perpetuate local stereotype. The Irish people have to get drunk to fight the aliens. Basically,
I mean,
it's pretty great.
the if there's any reason not to be eaten by aliens, like getting horribly drunk, it's a pretty good one, especially for an Irish horror movie. Not perpetuating stereotypes, still, but I think I would like to watch this film. Where would I watch Grabbers?
I haven't watched it in a while, but I believe that I watched it on Shudder back in the day, like a few years ago.
Oh, that does sound like a Shudder exclusive.
Um,
It's 2012.
I'm sure it's somewhere.
Oh, it looks
Grabbers.
funny. Is it like Shaun of the Dead kind of?
Yeah, it's a funny movie. It's currently
That's
at
John,
least in Canada, it's only available to buy or rent on iTunes right now.
it's a John Wright movie.
It's quite funny.
Hmm. I would.
Yeah,
That sounds like my kind of thing. Absolutely.
yeah.
Good. Well,
I'm sure
lovely.
it's totally illegal, so I would never recommend you do this. But I'm sure that if you had a VPN, you could find it streaming somewhere.
Yes,
Just saying.
indeed. I've heard that is the function of VPNs.
Yeah. Good.
All right.
Well,
So what are we talking about this week?
so we have two films to speak of this week, and I think we're going to talk about Uncharted first because it is older, played in theaters a while ago, and it's now available to premium, or it was premium rent. I think I rented it for about $7 in Canada, and it's the latest Tom Holland vehicle. Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg, and it's based on the video game series of the same name, and it is fine. It's fine, I guess.
What happens in this
It's
film? Actually,
well,
you know what?
there's
No, go ahead. It's fine.
so there's a treasure, and they need to find it, and it is in a place that is uncharted,
What? What?
and and the main characters trot around the globe, if you will, in order to find said treasure.
There's a couple of moments in this movie where they use maps, and the movie should have ended there really because it becomes charted straight away.
Yeah,
So that should have
pretty
been the end of
immediately.
that film.
Yeah,
Straight away.
it's I don't know. It's I don't know. What did you think of this film? I thought it was adequate.
I've got the cast list up. Who was Bryan Cranston in this movie?
What?
He was apparently Bryan Cranston is credited as in the cast of Uncharted.
Well, to give you a further idea of how I feel about this movie, I watched it approximately 6 days ago, and I do not remember things about this movie.
Uncharted is a great example of it makes you appreciate better filmmakers because all of its ideas and it openly references Indiana Jones on a few occasions, and they're just everything is shot, especially in the first half. It's a very bland movie, and then for some reason they decided to go for like a younger um, a younger version of the character than in the video games, which is fine. They want that Tom Holland audience. And my wife you mentioned Tom Holland is a Tom Holland vehicle. My wife would certainly like to use Tom Holland as a vehicle, and so she was very very happy about his. He was pretty ripped for Spider-Man, but I don't know what he's done between Spider-Man and this movie because he is so ripped, but he is so young looking. It looks like someone's photoshopped a picture of a schoolboy onto a very muscular man's body, which may have been what happened. But it's weird to think that he's like his age now. How old is Tom Holland? Because he's way older than you think he is.
He's like 25, I think.
25, and he's got such a boyish face. And
What's
so
funny though is that I had sort of the opposite. I had an opposite reaction in that I distinctly remember whilst watching this movie, thinking like, "Wow, he's an adult." Like he's not. It's the first film I think where he was both playing an adult and not dressed to look like a teenager, even though he kind of looks like a teenager.
And he's very, very likable. Unfortunately, the character, especially in the first half of this movie, they're trying to make Drake, Nate Drake, to be this like cheeky, flirty, happy-go-lucky. But they do that at one of the first times they establish that is when he's working in a bar, and this poor girl's trying to order a drink, and he is like the worst, like barman you could ever want to come across in any bar because he's just like flirt with her. It's like, it's like, you want this? Of course I know what that means. Like he is it's horribly written, and he starts flinging bottles around. Do you know the part I mean? And if I was a girl in that situation, I'd be like, "What? Just, I don't want a conversation with you. I want to order my drink." And it's not cheeky and flirtatious. It's just like needy man attention shown off. It's really bad. So at that point in the movie, I was like, "Well, this is going to be hateful." Luckily, there is a turning point in this film, and I think we both. Actually, it might have been with my wife. I was talking about this. There's a point in the movie where it goes from quite bland to a little bit better than bland. So I actually didn't hate the second half, but I thought, but not in a good way. I just thought it just got a bit more stupid. It still took stuff from the Goonies without being as good as the Goonies. It took so much from Indiana Jones without having any of that style or the quality that Spielberg brings or that Harrison Ford brings. For me, though, the star of the show for me was Sophia Taylor-Ali, who played a young version of Chloe Fraser. And in the game, Chloe Fraser is played by, you're going to kill me, the woman from Everything. Super, like Queen of Sci-Fi, Claudia Black. So she is voiced and modeled by Claudia Black in the games, including the best Uncharted game, which is Lost Legacy, which focuses on her. So Sophia Ali played a young version. Of course, Sophia Ali is American, and Claudia Black is a Kiwi. And Sophia Black does a really, 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 really good impression of Claudia Black's not just accent, but the way she delivers things. She's got this great, I mean, you know her voice, this great kind of sarcasm and dryness. And Sophia Taylor's Ali's got a few action scenes as well, and she looks really good. She's really strong and funny. And then her character it's almost like they didn't know how to deal with her in the last like half an hour, and they sent her off on this like weird fetch quest on purpose, and she keeps changing her allegiances, and none of it's believable and none of it works, and by the end of it she's like completely forgotten about. I don't know, this was not a good film. No. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, they full on. She's the best part of the three main characters. She's the best and most interesting one, and they just fully sent her away for the last half hour. I actually liked Tom Holland in the movie. At least I thought he was having a good time. I thought he was having a good time, like playing an adult, which I know he hasn't had a ton of opportunity to do. And I thought that Mark Wahlberg seemed wholly uninterested in being included in the show. You know, I thought that he was.
Mark Wahlberg was bad, just flat bad. I mean, he's not a good actor anyway. I've
See, I
never seen.
disagree. I think that Mark Wahlberg is very hit or miss. I think if you put him in the right place and give him the right direction, I think Mark Wahlberg can be really, really good. I think he was fully uninterested in being in this movie, or at least that's what it came across as, because
Well, this
he is
film's been
not good.
this, this film's been in production, pre-production for so long that he was actually the only reason he's on board is that he was originally brought in to play Nathan Drake, and it's been so long for this film to play out. He's now aged out of the role, which is why I think they gave him Sully. And he was. I completely agree with you. He didn't want to be there. He's pretty bad at what he does, and he's. If you're watching this video game, sorry, if you're watching this movie to kind of relive the video game, he's nothing like the Sully character at all. There's a really good fan film of Uncharted with Nathan Fillion, of course, um, as Nate Drake, and Sully is played by. Oh, he's really good. I'm so bad with names. In Avatar, he's the military leader, the silver-haired military leader.
Stephen Lang.
Stephen Lang. Stephen Lang is Sully, and he's perfect as Sully. Like, he's the right age, the right demeanor, and of course Nathan Fillion is the perfect Nathan Drake if you were going for something more authentic. In fact, we watched that short. It's only a 10-minute YouTube thing. It's well worth watching straight after you watch Uncharted the movie, because I know which I'd rather watch as a full-length movie. But Tom Holland is really likable, even with terrible material. He's really endearing, and in the second half of this movie, he stops being, as a character, so hatefully written. But there's so many twists and turns. And also, I like stupid as much as anyone. I have no problem with flying out a pirate ship by helicopter that you've just said we can't possibly damage this ship, and then you attack it and chip all kinds of shit out of it. What I do have a problem with is when you're hanging on to boxes that are hanging on the back of a plane, you don't have the muscles to be able to jump up that string of crates hanging off the edge of the plane and then jump onto the plane yourself. It's just there's suspension of disbelief.
That's where it lost
you. Like I say, I don't mind like pirate ship. I do mind like my brain is like no. It's just when you go beyond fun, you just become stupid. I think there's a fine line, and when he's jumping forward. Like, think about his thigh muscles. Unless he's been working out in the gym, like every day's leg day, to jump up a plane as it's moving very fast in one direction. Anyway, by this point, Chloe had changed allegiances for no reason. Things had happened that didn't make sense, and it was kind of falling apart anyway. So I didn't really care that much, but it just wasn't a well-made movie. And who made it? Was it
It's Ruben Fleischer is the director.
He's the zombie movie guy, right?
Yeah, so he made Zombieland, which is legitimately great, and he made Zombieland 2, which is not good. He made Gangster Squad, which admittedly was hampered by real-world circumstances, delaying it and forcing a bunch of reshoots. But is still still not good. Like even though you can even see the original film would have not been great, you know. He's just not that great. He did direct a movie you love. He directed the first Venom movie. But
did he?
I think he has like a shtick, and he used it up in his first go. Is my.
So I had a theory after this movie that because we talk a lot about creativity and quality and everything, and it was quite a bland movie in so many ways. But I'm also convinced that some production companies hire bland directors on purpose because bland is much faster and cheaper than someone who's trying to do things differently or be more of an auteur and find their own voice. They just want a director who's going to, like, this thing had been delayed so much anyway, they just want somebody who's going to roll in and do the shots. I mean, it's the same with Paul W.S. Anderson, who is, who's the bad one? That's just Paul Anderson, right? So not the director of Magnolia.
There's P.T. Anderson and there's Paul W.S. Anderson. P.T. Anderson is the good one.
Resident Evil director.
Paul W.S. Anderson is the guy who basically married
Mila Jovovich.
Mila Jovovich, and
Yeah,
who basically keeps making movies just to make
yeah.
her look awesome. And
So
honestly, power to him.
I hate
It's
his movies. His direction makes me physically angry. I think he's an awful director, but he keeps getting hired because he is fast and he will get the shots done. And his movies kind of make money in international markets. And yeah, he's very good at making Mila Jovovich look good, but that's not a big push, is it really?
no,
So maybe Ruben is a bit like that. He's just a workhorse. He doesn't offer creativity. I was just thinking when I was watching Uncharted how much better it would have been in the hands of a director who could have given it a bit of flair, like a bit of character. Um, I mean, there's moments. It's quite interesting. A character called Braddock, played by an actress I don't know called Tati Gabrielle,
hmm
who there's one very surprising moment that centers around her that I didn't see coming.
I mean,
Um,
you don't know her because this was her. I don't know if it's her. It's certainly her film debut. Like it's her
oh,
first.
well, you wouldn't know because she's solid in this. I thought.
Yeah,
And there's a moment in a church which is interesting, which is where the movie starts getting more interesting. So there's flashes of things, and Antonio Banderas is always great. I've never seen him be anything but great. So it's always nice to see him in something, even though he's not really in this very much.
yeah,
But the rest of it is just like, it's just so needlessly bland.
yeah. And I feel like you're talking about how you had trouble with the big stunt that was in the trailer where he's climbing up the cargo net behind the plane. And my bigger problem came in the opposite way, in that in the climax of this film they find two hundreds of years old beached sailing ships and they lift them out by helicopter, and the first thing everyone says is, oh, these things are priceless, we couldn't possibly damage. And then they damage them, and then they like immediately start hooking up chains to them, damaging them in the process. And then they have a prolonged immediately have a prolonged air hundreds of year old ship fight where they both get destroyed. And it, like, what is the I don't like I'm so tired. It's like it's one of those films that to me I don't know, I don't have any like inside baseball on the production of this film, but it feels like a film where they had planned out the climax before the script was even written, and then they had to sort of write to that point.
Mm. Totally. Yeah, the that's the problem with a lot of CG heavy scenes. It's happening in a lot of Marvel stuff as well. Is that they have to have it pre-directed and being made even before film starts rolling.
Hmm.
So I think you're absolutely right. This did completely smell of okay. Here's these five things that we've already put through like pre-processing. Now you got to write a story around them and make Tom Holland look good at some point.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I think it's a solid 2 out of 5 for me. I
Yeah,
don't know about you.
yeah, 2 out of 5 is fair, and sure at some point I don't think it's going to take very long for this to pop up on a streaming service that you listeners probably have access to, and you could do worse. Just have a few drinks and watch Tom Holland be actually quite endearing. Even that's his superpower, isn't it? Really, I want to watch that thing with Daisy Ridley that's meant to be awful because he's probably really endearing in that as well. He's just very good at making people like him, even when he's being the most obnoxious bartender you've ever seen in your life.
It's funny actually
Um,
because he did a movie with called Cherry with the Russo brothers,
mm,
which was an Apple TV Plus exclusive, and it actually kind of works against him in that because he plays like a veteran who's becomes a bank
mm,
robber, and he's supposed to be kind of be a jerk and a drug addict, and but he's so likable that there's this dissonance that doesn't make any sense
yeah,
because he's Tom Holland.
yeah. So yeah, that's going to be his Achilles heel, isn't it? You can't not be nice, can't not be likable.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I really like. I would rewatch the scenes with Sophia Taylor Ali uh, in like the end of the second third. She gets some good stuff, and then she just some really stupid things happen, and they kind of forget about her. So it's a real shame.
hmm
But yeah, it's a solid 2 as long as you know what you're getting into.
and for the record, I think you have played all the games and I have played
Yeah.
none of them. So whichever
Oh,
angle
have
you're
you?
coming from, that is an
Hmm.
accurate representation.
So, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
kind of
It's a
disappointing.
shame. It's
It's
a
a shame.
waste, but it's it's been so long now. I don't think they. I just think they needed it out of the gate. They needed it done, and
Yeah.
that's what it feels like.
But I mean, if you want to see Tom Holland be charming, or if you want to see Tom Holland do pull-ups that turn into push-ups, then this movie has some stuff for you. That's all I'm gonna say.
If my wife would never join us on this podcast, but if she were, I think she might have a 5-star rating for this movie, because that's her happy place.
I mean, your wife has a delightful little noise she makes whenever she sees someone
How
like
do you
Tom
know?
Holland
How do you know about
with her shirt with their shirt off. She's sort of like you'll be watching a movie with her, and she'll be like,
that?
"Oh,"
she's,
it turns
she's
into Jeff.
very
It basically turns into Jeff Goldblum. Oh, it just it's
she's very English in that way. It's like, oh my
yeah.
goodness me. Oh Tom. What are you doing here, Tom? No, Tom, I'm alone. I couldn't possibly. I'm married. Oh Tom. I don't think she would
uh,
protest that much.
no,
Uh good. Yeah. So should we move on?
yeah, we should. The Uncharted. You can watch it if you want to. I guess I
Wow.
don't know.
Please put that as your print review. You can watch this if you want to. And they're probably going to make another one that there's a post credit scene with the most ridiculous mustache on Mark Wahlberg's face. And
I don't know if
it,
it made enough money to make a second one. To be honest,
didn't it?
I
But
think.
the,
I mean, maybe
but
because
the,
hampered by the pandemic as well. So
yeah, it will probably clean up on video on demand. That's how these things work. This is the kind of movie that will do well on VHS and Betamax, maybe even Laserdisc,
hmm
throughout the world.
yeah, it's weird to think, but it had a $120 million budget and it made $400 million, which means it only sort of
Mm,
just broke even, really.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's weird, but in today's day and age, $400 million is just not really a hit anymore, right? Like unless you're encroaching three commas, you're not really making money at this point for these kind of
I don't
films.
know. I think it will make a lot more on on demand and on DVD, and it's the kind of thing that will have legs. And honestly, they can, if they get the chance to make another cheap sequel, most of their money is going to go on Tom Holland and probably Mark Wahlberg, and I think it's probably an easy win for Sony to get Tom on board and make another completely average action movie
Yeah,
and triple. As long as they're making that kind of money, it'll probably work out for them.
yeah, you're
And
probably right.
it gives them streaming prestige as well and all that bullshit in the future.
Yeah. Well,
So you're
speaking of
probably
which,
yes.
that's very much like the next movie we're going to talk about. Um, so this past Friday released on Disney Plus in Canada, and I can't remember if it's Disney Plus or Hulu in the States, but a sequel, I guess, to Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, starring Andy Samberg and John Mulaney, has been released, and it is a well, it's CG blended. It's basically Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but for this generation. It's animated characters mixed with live action characters, set in a world where every cartoon is a real person and character, and it's billed ostensibly as a kids show, but it is very much a PG-13 comedy aimed directly at people like me who, when they were 10, were watching Chippendales Rescue Rangers on TV. And did you watch Chippendales? Like, did you watch the animated show when you were a kid?
Yeah, not to the extent you did, but it did feature in the United Kingdom on one
Yeah,
of our 4 channels. It not much of it. I
yeah,
watched more Ducktales, that kind
yeah.
of thing. But
So it was part of
yeah,
the Disney afternoon, and I think that this film is probably going to do. Is I think it is doing quite well among our demographic,
mhm,
because it has a lot of deep cuts to the stuff we watched growing up. It is a full blown nostalgia trip where Chip and Dale are estranged former TV stars and best friends, and they end up going on an adventure to find out where Monterey Jack, their co star from their TV show, has been kidnapped for nefarious purposes.
mhm.
Um, and they go on an adventure to find him. It is good. I liked it. I don't know. Did you like it?
I really wanted to love it, and at the beginning, I really did. I was getting some real Lego Movie vibes from the
Hmm.
beginning, and by the end of it, I, I really wanted to love this movie, and by the end, I thought it was just fine. Like I thought it was fine, and I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about why I didn't react to it more positively.
Yeah, I found it. I when I first watched it, I thought very highly of it, and the more I think about it, the more I kind of think it's fine as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is an interesting thing that happens with art when you give it time to marinate in your brain. Um,
So what I found though.
I thought that was very clever. I thought that John Mulaney and Andy Samberg were great. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that a lot of the jokes about them being sort of aged out former stars were great. I loved that Dale had CG surgery to be have his
Mm-hmm.
animation updated. I love all of the like characters they brought in, like in a very Roger Rabbit kind of way. Like at one point, I love that Dale is at like obviously like a fan convention, and the booth across from him is Ugly Sonic as a full blown character from the first trailer for the first Sonic the Hedgehog, and not just like as a gag, like he's a full blown character in the movie, and I kind of love that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the more I think about it, the more it's kind of weird that I mean, weird's not the right word, but it's definitely worth unpacking that the villains in this Disney movie are literally a band of bootleg Disney animated characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's definitely some. It's fun. It's nostalgia, but it's also a very cynical, um, just dump of like look at all the IP we own or at least can get access to.
Yeah, it was clever. There were lots of really clever things, but do you know who this movie didn't work for?
Your children?
It My children.
Yeah, it's not a
So
kids
my
movie. It's very much not a
I
kids movie.
I every 2 or 3 minutes when I'd laugh, they'd be like, "Why are you laughing?" I'd say, "Oh, in the background there's that character, because he's funny because in the 80s." And they're like, so as a movie for someone who isn't in, who doesn't understand the references,
Yeah.
it was kind of nothing for them. And I really trust their opinion when it comes to kids' movies. And they felt the same. We watched The Bad Guys, and they were not fans of The Bad Guys. And they've got a very reliable barometer of quality when it comes to kids' movies. Because we watch a lot of movies. Surprisingly, they are movie kids.
Hmm.
And they've got really good, quite specific opinions about what makes movies work. It's really nice to hear them talk about it. And by the end of it, they're like, yeah, it's fine. I mean, it made me realize this, as you say, this is a kids. It's masquerading as a kids film, but it's really a set of, hey guys, remember this?
Hmm.
And I'm not sure if that. Maybe that's why I didn't enjoy it as much, because it just felt really superficial in a way that the Lego Movie doesn't, Roger Rabbit doesn't. The other kind of similarly toned things.
Hmm.
There's things in there that kids get, and there's extra things for adults. And this was just a laundry list of, oh look, it's that guy from that thing. Oh, it's Ugly Sonic, which was fine. Oh look, there's a Generation One Transformer in the audience. But the actual everything else was, maybe it just felt too cluttered. Like, it was a solid story. It was a good idea for a story,
Not a
but it
new
just,
story though. Like,
no, exactly. It
and
was fine. I don't know.
I think what we're the difference with some of the films we've been mentioning, um, like Roger Rabbit, like the Lego Movie, is that they do have a very distinct balance of jokes for kids and jokes for the adults watching with the kids. And this movie is entirely jokes for the adults. Like it's a movie for me. It's a movie for 40-year-olds. It's not a movie for children. And I
Mm,
think that detracts from it a little bit. I will say that again, I think that Sandberg and Mulaney were great. I think J.K. Simmons is always an excellent choice when you need to,
mm-hmm,
cast someone to be a gruff police captain. I thought that him being stop motion animated among all these other animated characters was really clever and really well executed.
mm-hmm.
I think I love Kiki Lane. I want her to be in more things.
Is
And
that
she's
the police officer?
Yeah, she's lovely and she's great, and you've probably seen her in The Old Guard. And if you watched If Beale Street Could Talk,
Oh yeah.
she's delightful, and I really want her to show up in more things. She deserves. I mean, she's had some high profile roles, but I would like to see her like break big because
Hmm.
she's great. She's um, very charismatic, and she lights up the screen every time she's on it. But I mean, I don't really. The problem is a lot of it is that I just don't remember it anymore. I watched it like 3 days
Yeah.
ago, and there's great swaths of this movie that I just don't remember anymore.
Yeah. No, totally. And I
Right?
think that's a really strong indication of it, of
And
its kind of quality.
I do also think that it's a problem that there are some really funny deep cut jokes in this, but I think
Hmm.
some of the stuff I laughed the most at was just silly background things.
Hmm.
And while those should be like the garnish, not the entree, you know what I mean? You know, they
Hmm.
should be. Although the Meryl Streep in Mr. Doubtfire was pretty funny as a billboard.
That's right. Yeah, there's lots of, because it's a Lonely Island kind of thing, isn't it? It's directed by one of them and starring another one of them, and there's things like the Fast and the Furious poster with Vin Diesel and Chippendale. Like that's always going to be funny,
Yeah, I did
but
laugh a lot when I was watching it. Like it's
I did
not funny.
I did too, but I think I laughed really hard in the first quarter, and then realized I was having to explain every single time why I was laughing. And then I noticed that everything that it built up was so kind of cluttered in references. I stopped enjoying the story that much. And then I didn't really think the resolution was that good. So it kind of drained off of me. Because maybe I built it up too much, because at the beginning I was like, this is another like Lego movie. This is going to be that good,
Hmm.
because it's amazing so far, but the drop off is real.
I wonder if it was just also watching with your kids who weren't enjoying it. Like
Um,
because
they yeah
when you're watching in a group, whatever the group is, if the group isn't reacting, it can the group reaction influences your own reaction, right? So if you have something you're finding really funny, but your kids are like, I don't get it,
yeah
then I
maybe
can definitely see that detracting from your experience.
yeah yeah maybe, but I think and again it's a bit of a missed opportunity, and I maybe we can expand this a little bit. And I know you're probably going to disagree with this, but larger Lonely Island projects often feel a bit scattershot without without having any like extra depth. Now, I know you're going to say Popstar. How many times have you seen Popstar?
A
Never
lot,
stopping.
a lot of
And
times.
and I also now love that movie. After really disliking that movie, I now love that movie. That's probably your influence. But it, many of their longer things often feel like it's more like the jokes rather than the substantial quality of the story of the film itself. And this felt a bit like that, just a shallow collection of jokes. And it is weird that it's a kids movie made for 40-year-olds. I'm not sure that entirely works.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what else that they've actually done. I mean, the only other
So
movies they did, they produced and wrote MacGruber and Hot Rod and Popstar,
mhm, mhm. Like
and
Hot
then
Rod's a good example as well. Hot Rod isn't great.
Hot Rod is one of
It's
those things that it's like in this. I think MacGruber is better, but Hot Rod isn't necessarily great. But what it is eminently quotable. Like the parts that are good are
mm,
really good.
mm,
I would also authorize that, and maybe it's because I'm a baseball fan, but the unauthorized Bash Brothers experience is pretty hilarious from start to
see,
finish.
I didn't like that at all. I
Yeah,
tried watching it after your recommendation, didn't work for me at all.
yeah.
Um,
I mean,
and the Tour de France one, what was that? Tour de Pharmacy was fine.
oh, I really love
Uh,
7 Days in Hell and Tour de Pharmacy, but that's only Sandberg. I think that's not actually them as
is it?
a group. I don't think.
I think if using Ugly Sonic is interesting, because if you compare the Sonic movie, the first one, I haven't seen the second, to this, the Sonic movie is obviously again referencing nostalgia for people our age who played the game and know the characters, but it's also written to appeal to the children watching it who've never played Sonic the Hedgehog. Like they get it, And I think maybe what this was lacking was an appreciation of what are the kids that are watching this that don't know the references, what are they getting out of this? And I think that's maybe where it stumbled.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I feel like that's the conclusion we both come to. Yeah, I don't. It needs a balance that it lacks.
Yeah,
but
true
I did laugh a
story.
lot watching it. I did legitimately laugh a lot watching it.
Yeah, it's
So
worth watching. Get a couple of beers. I tell you what, Uncharted and Chippendale as a double, like back to back with a couple of beers and a big thing of popcorn. You could do a lot worse.
That's true. That's very
You could
true.
also do much better. But but if you have Disney Plus, you already own it. So hey,
or at least you have a license to watch it, because that's the world we
live in. Yeah, there's no ownership anymore.
Yeah. Good. Well, what would you give it out
how
of
many
5
stars?
then?
Oh, okay, it's a 2.
Yeah, I would still give it. I gave it a 4 when I first watched it. I think now I would give it a 3, because I do think it's. I don't think it's bad. I just think it is again a bit of a missed opportunity to be something greater.
Yeah, totally.
But that
totally.
it's. I laughed enough to make it a 3. Like, it's definitely. I will tell. I would say you should watch it. It is not a bad movie. It's just like everything we're talking about. I mean, art is subjective anyway. You might love this movie in a way that we didn't, and lots of people in our demographic, most of the people that I know, like the sort of film crew that I run with, most people I know who've watched this have really loved it, but they're also in my exact demographic. Like, I don't really think it's a kids movie, even though it's set up as one. But
I wonder if I'd watched a lot of Rescue Rangers as a kid, if that was my favorite cartoon as a kid, then I think perhaps my reaction might have been more positive. But
maybe
I'm with my.
I mean, there's it is I would say much more of a love letter to like the late '80s, early '90s cartoons as much as it is to Chippendale specifically. Um, and I did also like the gag where like all of the characters voiced by Seth Rogen showed up and talked to one another. But like again, like it was very much everyone I know who's truly loved it has been from our demographic.
Yeah.
And that's
and
just
the
all.
whole
I know I'm just sounding like a broken record, but that's just how it is, right? It's a movie for us, and if
same
you
with the Uncanny Valley reference. Like we get that, and my kids are just like, why do they look so bad? I don't get it. Like, why is this here? Why is this happening? So
yeah. So anyway, well, it's that's 2 okay-ish movies, sort of, from us this week.
With caveats.
And it's interesting. So we have less to say. The episode runs shorter, and that's probably fine. So go outside and spend the next 20 minutes doing something else.
That's right. That's where I'm going. I'm going back to the Vancouver Comic Art Show, which is the best nerd event of the year because the vibes are amazing. It's free to get in. Like, if you compare to Fan Expo, which has gone completely the other direction of kind of cynical and really expensive, nickel and diming nostalgia left, right, and center. The Vancouver Comic Art Show is great vibes, free to get in. Everyone's super enthusiastic about showing off their work, and you can buy some really good art there, as we did yesterday. My kids met loads of creators, so it's really inspiring for them. And everyone was lovely, so I'm going back to that for the second day today.
Good. I'm not doing that at all. I'm enjoying my time off away from people, so have fun with that.
Yes, I will.
Yeah. Next week, I don't know exactly what we're gonna have. I know what I will have seen, but I don't know what you will be able to see whether it's with me or not. So we will have to figure that out.
You have to tell me what that is.
In the meantime, thank you for listening. If you would like to, if you like what you heard and you'd like to support us, please consider giving us a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice, or subscribe, or share it to your friends. Or if you'd like to support us more directly, we have a Patreon, and you can find that all linked in the show notes. We're coming to you from the unceded lands of the Musqueams, the Wet'suwet'en and Squamish nations. My name is Matthew. He was Simon, and thank you for joining us on this awesome Friday.
Bye.